Hey everybody, SchwarzTKD here, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to go a little more in depth on the Power Rangers film beyond what we discussed on the podcast. I was really impressed by how well this film came out. It was not the greatest movie in the world, but yeah, first of all, what is? And I wasn't expecting it to be. With the first few trailers came out, I was really not excited for it. It looked very dark and gritty just for the sake of being dark and gritty. Taking the wrong lesson from the Christopher Nolan Batman films. But then when that third trailer came out, and I saw the Zords, and I saw when they were fighting in the Ranger suits, and it was in a bright, open environment, you could see the punches and kicks that they were doing. I let myself get a little tentatively excited. So, I went in still pretty on the fence about it. And I was just blown out of the water. It just came out so much better than I could have hoped. I don't even think of it as a reboot so much as a modernization. And what I mean by that is, in the 90s, with the original show, you had the character archetypes were the jock, the pretty girl, the artist, the nerd, the cool kid. And those archetypes were fine for the 90s. But we need more these days. We've reached a point when we can acknowledge that there's a need for more. And as a culture, we're finally reaching a point where we're ready for that. So no, they were not the quote unquote perfect role models that the 90s show was trying to be. They were actually not perfect characters. An example in the film is that Kimberly, who was the nicest member of the original cast, Kimberly took a nude photo of one of her friends and sent it to that girl's boyfriend. And basically was a bully, was a cyberbully. So she was not, obviously it was not a nice thing to do. But the film has a couple moments, one moment where she's actually saying what happened that, something that characters had been alluding to for the whole film. Right at the start of the third act, she comes clean with what she did to Jason. But earlier in the film, she's clearly dealing with guilt about the repercussions and about just the act itself. She feels terrible about what she did. And that's a good thing. The original show, they were straight up role models. This movie is more real people dealing with real things. Another example of that is Jason. The film opens with him pulling a prank on a neighboring school, getting in trouble, crashing his truck, getting injured, so he loses his ability to play football. He's dealing with the consequences of his action. Billy is on the autism spectrum. They come out and outright state that within the first 15-20 minutes of the film. One thing I particularly liked about that is that a lot of movies and TV shows will take something like autism or a character with a non-visible disability, and they will use, as a character arc, that character will somehow get past it. But these aren't things that you get past. Someone with autism will always have it. So rather than him getting past it, the other members of the team just help him work with it. No one ever outright says to him that he just needs to stop having those difficulties. So that was fantastic, because a lesser film or a lesser TV show would not have treated it that way. Those three, Jason, Kimberly, and Billy, do get the most character development. It kind of sucks that Zach and Trini don't get as much. Zach's development is rushed a little bit halfway through the second act, which is unfortunate because he actually has the best backstory this time around. But even so, all five of them are treated very fairly with the time that we have, because they had to set the entire stage for everything. They had to introduce what the Power Rangers were, why these five are coming together, what it means for the stakes of the plot. So I was really impressed just with that, just with the character development and the writing, and I'm really excited to see where they take this stuff in the sequel. I'm hoping that Zach and Trini can have, maybe the B plot of the sequel can be for them to get some more development. Because obviously the main plot of the sequel, they tease it at the end in the credits scene. They mention Tommy Oliver, and obviously whoever plays him in the sequel will be the Green Ranger. Getting back to the actual plot, so in this film, Zordon was actually the original Red Ranger. His entire team gets killed by Rita in the opening act of the film. And she gets knocked into basically suspended animation. Right when the Ranger kids find the power coins, she revives, and it turns out Rita's the original Green Ranger in this version. And Elizabeth Banks was the best part of the fucking movie. Just hands down. She was phenomenal, whether she was going full tilt, chewing the scenery, Shatner style, just owning the spotlight, or when it was just her, just in the middle of the chaos of the final battle, just being completely casual while her giant version of Goldar is smashing a building around her. Just sitting there eating a fucking donut. She was phenomenal. She was easily the best part of the movie. And the plot was solid too, because, for basic 3-act structure, introduce the characters in the setting. The second act was all about Rita gaining power and the Rangers doing their training montage. That was actually one of the better training montages I've seen. It ran a little longer than most, but for 5 characters, it showed them coming together and developing their skills so that when they were fighting in the Ranger suits at the end, it made sense for these kids with no martial arts background in this film. The 90s show, they all had martial arts or some kind of physical fitness background. So it made sense for them to suddenly be kicking ass. And that was where the movie really, really was at its strongest, because, again, this was a modernization, and if you saw those first few trailers, you knew it was going to be a little darker than the classic shows, or even the more recent Ranger shows are still very bright and energetic. The first 2 acts are very, they're gritty, but they're not gritty just for the sake of, look how edgy we can be. They are simply more up to date. But when they finally put on the Ranger suits, they made the best possible choice, and they completely embraced the inherent campiness of the franchise. The Rangers are fighting all the putties, and one of them, I think maybe it was Trini, she kicks the head off of one, it flies into another, and she shouts, "Heads up." When they got the Zords, these were the best Zords I've ever seen. The way they looked like the classic Zords. One exception being, instead of the Mastodon for the Black Ranger, it looked like a beetle of some sort. But the other 4 were, T-Rex, Saber-toothed Tiger, Pterodactyl, and Triceratops. They had guns, but it wasn't outlandish. It made sense for what they were, like the Pterodactyl having guns under its wings, and doing things like picking up the other Zords and dive-bombing them into enemies. And it just all came together so well. Also, in that 3rd act was when they really started pulling out some of the Easter eggs. An example being, because of course the movie takes place in Angel Grove, like the original show. At one point in the final battle, one of the Rangers' parents, he's driving around looking for his son, and he's on his cell phone leaving the kid a message, and he's saying, "Where are you? I'm at the corner of Mariner Bay and Reefside," which, if you're familiar with Rangers, that's 2 other Ranger cities. That was my favorite Easter egg of the movie. And it just all came together so well. There are a few things that could use some work. Again, Zach and Trini did not get a lot of development, and that was a time constraint. I wouldn't be surprised if there were deleted scenes where they get a little bit more camera time. Trini had only 1 scene where she wasn't with the other Rangers, or with someone else essential to the plot. She had 1 scene with her family. Zach had 2 with his family. All the others had multiple scenes where they weren't directly focusing on the Ranger training and the threat of Rita. But all said and done, this was a great film. It all came together so well. The setup for the sequel was not heavy-handed. The setup for the sequel felt almost as if it stepped right out of the original show. Rita gets defeated, and the Rangers go back to their regular lives, and there's a teaser for Tommy Oliver, the original Green Ranger. My expectation for the sequel, because Rita was the original Green Ranger in this version, but she gets defeated, I'm thinking that the Green Ranger coin will no longer work for her. And so when the second film is probably going to start with Lord Zed rescuing her from literally being knocked into space at the end of the movie, he'll rescue her from her defeat. They'll realize her coin is no longer working. They'll recruit Tommy Oliver. The bulk of the film will be about breaking him free of Rita's control and getting him on the Ranger team. But again, that leaves a lot of room for more character development for the others, particularly for Zach and Trini. I know I keep mentioning that, but it's just a bummer that they did not get equal development. But when you consider that there's 5 Rangers, Zordon, Rita, their families that they all have to give screen time to, and to some degree, so they did what they could with it. And the designs, I know a lot of people are giving crap on the designs. Those suits looked amazing when they were in action. They looked much better than the previews made them seem. And again, a big part of that was that when they were fighting the putties, they were in a bright, open environment. You could see the vibrant color of the suits. You could see them moving. The design of the suit was great, too. It was this cloth mesh undercoating, and then the armor was on top of it. So it actually looked like a battle suit. It was really fantastic to see. Couple other things that I was hoping for and didn't get to see. Only Jason pulled out his suit's weapon. Only Jason pulled out his sword. And I was really hoping to see the bow and the axe and the daggers and everyone. I was really hoping to see everyone's weapons. Maybe even have all 5 weapons come together for the blaster. But I could not have been happier. The anticipation actually paid off this time. And I'm excited to see what they do with the sequel. I hope that other studios that are going to capitalize on the nostalgia TV shows to turn into movies, the toy lines to turn into movies, because there's a Barbie movie coming up now. I hope that other studios take the lesson from this of focus on making a good movie first, a strong film that your audience will enjoy regardless of whether it's a Power Rangers movie or just, they could have made this any action movie. This could have been a freaking G.I. Joe movie, and it would have worked just as well with the way they handled it. So yeah, all said and done, strongly recommend it. Can't wait to see more from it. Absolutely picking it up when it comes out. If only for the moment, there is one moment when they play the classic Go-Go Power Rangers theme, and it is so perfectly timed that I cannot get that image out of my head. Yeah, check it out. Even if you're not a fan of the Rangers, it's still a good one to see. If you've already seen Beauty and the Beast, there's not much else playing right now. Alright, take care, gang, and I'll see you on the next review. Next review.